You mean to tell me none of your spies have returned? Nyalotha is out there, and we need answers now!
We are doing all we can. Speaker Magni is coming, along with a new advisor. He claims to have information for us.
By the light. A new advisor. Rathian.
Anduin, it's been so long!
Oh, dragons. I suppose I deserved that.
Oh, you deserve more than that. My father is dead because of you!
And my father is dead because of the old gods. Lad, he's come to help us.
Neltharion the Earthwarder was once the protector of Azeroth. But Nyalotha turned a noble mind to madness, and now my father is only remembered as Deathwing. And as I haven't the least desire to share that fate, I've been studying how to avoid it.
Just tell me how to prepare for this attack. Our armies
Will be useless. Nyalotha will strike here. He'll manipulate emotions, get people to act in ways contrary to their nature. You won't be able to trust your senses, your memories, your friends. After all, what is real if our perceptions cannot be trusted? Anduin! Don't you see, old friend? It's already begun.
very well, advisor. Tell us how to stop him.
So I would say old Doom has seen better times, right? Oh gosh, those great worms from beyond. How many of you remember how annoying those things were when this was current? Oh my goodness. So the entrance to Nyalotha is a little unique because it alternates location every week. There are two zones that you can be able to enter this raid. Either Old Doom, when the Black Empire assault is here, or it'll be in Pandaria, in the Vale of Eternal Blossoms. And it would be like, I think somewhere over here, I forget. So, yeah, if you wanted to, say, go to the Siege of Orgrimmar, you'd have to talk to one of the Bronze Dragon over here in this area and be like, I want to go to Siege rather than Nyalotha. But there's going to be another assault happening over there that does not have to do with the Black Empire. It'll be something else. But, yeah. This is what it looks like when the Black Empire is here. Gosh, I have so many memories from this patch. This patch has a lot of personal relevance and memory for me, because this was a huge turning point for me as a player. For my personal experiences, there was no patch that I got to experience more and had more of an effect and impact on me as a player than this patch here. I've mentioned before that the pandemic happened during this patch. Not necessarily at the beginning of the patch, but it happened while this patch was going on. So let's just say many of us had a lot of time to play this particular patch, especially since it was the last patch of BFA, and then we had to wait for the next after this. And a lot of people were eager for what was going to happen after this, because a lot of people were sick of BFA and wanted to get out of this. I will say this, though. As many issues as this patch brought, it was a brave patch because they were trying things, experimenting with things, such as corruption gear. How many of you remember corruption gear in this patch? I know many do because some of them were extremely strong. Unfortunately, I don't have the means to show them to you. At least I don't think so anymore. It might be in the loot table. But the thing is, a lot of those effects are just no longer, or like, yeah, if you look at these, it no longer tells you what the effect of those particular pieces of gear did back then when this was current, because it just shows the stats. It doesn't show you what some of them actually did in terms of their corruption. I'm not talking about the trinkets. I'm talking about like the other pieces of gear, because what they decided to do was, okay, you can get this gear, but it has corruption on it. The more corruption you have on you, the more negative stats you will give yourself. It can have more of a negative effect on your character. However, if you don't cleanse the item of the corruption, you also get this effect on it, which is really powerful. The one that everyone remembers, I think it was called Twilight Devastation. And it was an extremely effective corrupted piece of gear on tanks, because I think it was like the more health you had, it would trigger this kind of effect that would just kind of do this, like the pattern. Think of Lombard Street in San Francisco. It would kind of go in that pattern, and it would do so much damage, especially if it was on a tank. Everybody remembers that particular corrupted piece of gear. There were quite a few different ones, and there were, of course, lists and such of like which ones you should get, especially for various different classes and such. But unfortunately, like I said, I wish I could show them to you, but they're no longer in the game anymore. They deactivated it once this patch was over. So let's go ahead and step inside. This is the entrance over here, as you would expect. So before we get underway here, let's talk about a couple things I want to mention about that little trailer I showed you. One, Rathian, hey, welcome back. Second, oh my gosh, what a punch! Manduin just brought the hammer down on Rathian there. Woo! I remember when this patch went live, people were live streaming when it was going live. One of the people I was watching was Towley. And his reaction to that punch was great. He was like, "Oh crap! Oh dang! What a punch!" He was just so shocked and impressed by how hard of a punch Manduin threw there. Woo! He had some hair on his chin when he threw that punch. Of course, he has a lot more hair on his chin nowadays, but that's for later. So, welcome. You're probably going, wait a minute. This is Nyalotha? About that. Nyalotha, the sleeping city, has awakened. Under N'Zoth's command, the armies of the Black Empire threaten to engulf the world and reshape it according to their master's vision. Only one hope remains. Using the repaired Titan Forges to eradicate the Corruptor once and for all. But in order to target N'Zoth with the Forge's power, the champions of Azeroth must venture deep into the horrific realm for one final confrontation against the old god. At the end of Vanilla, well, sort of, since Noxramas was essentially the end of Vanilla, but towards the end of Vanilla, we faced off against Cthulhu. In Wrath, we ventured deep into Ulduar and vanquished Yogg-Saron. Now, Y'Shaarj had been killed long ago, but we faced what remnants left over he had in Missa Pandaria when Garrosh utilized them, with the remaining remnants of the heart of Y'Shaarj. But now we come to this, the last of the 4 big named old gods. I say the 4 big named ones because people to this day have still speculated and theorized whether or not there could be more than just those 4. Those are just the big 4 that we know of. But could there be more? After all, some of us speculated whether or not Gahun was an old god, but rather just say Avatar experimentation by the Titans. This raid. Oh my goodness. This is the raid I can actually talk a lot more in detail about because I have so much personal recollection from this raid. Like I said, I actually finally got to experience progression for the first time as a player in this raid. It all started when I was just doing some questing on my Alliance Demon Heart at the time. You guys were seeing me do the questing for Kultiris during that time. And the GM of the guild that I'm in, Wipes on Trash, my Alliance guild, was asking for people to join Mythic Island expeditions. And being the nice guy I am, I volunteered, not knowing what I was getting myself into. I joined in and helped out. They noticed I was severely undergeared. Because I was playing Vengeance. I wasn't dying, but I wasn't killing anything. And so they decided, okay, we're going to get you some better gear. So they took me into some Mythic Plus dungeons. And they were geared, so they were carrying me. They had leather characters, so they were just trying to get gear to give to me. This was the first time I'd ever experienced something like this. And it was just kind of an eye-opening experience. And later on, when they were gathering their raid group to do this, I, of course, was curious and interested because I want to keep participating in this. And I asked if I could join. And he was like, okay, I'll tell you what. You meet this criteria, you can join us. I met the criteria and I was able to join. And as you can say, the rest is history. So, before I talk about this fight, this first fight we have here, because you're probably going, wait a minute, what's Rathian doing here? Well,
come, my chosen. Witness the fate of this world. Behold the one who shall herald its coming.
My dear friends, a wondrous honor has been bestowed upon you. The chance to embrace your destiny, as I have. N'Zoth has shown me the inevitable truth that to save Azeroth, we must accept his gift.
Kneel and serve. It is the only way.
Rathian, the Black Emperor. Despite all of his precautions, Rathian could not avoid succumbing to the madness that claimed his father. With his mind twisted by N'Zoth, he believes that the only way he can truly defend Azeroth is to rule it in the old god's name. A prince no longer, Rathian now takes his rightful place as the Black Emperor. I will say, even though we do get to see his actual dragon model later on in this raid, this one looks pretty cool, I gotta say. I mean, just look at it. Look at the lava coming out. Just kind of like all around. I love that aesthetic in general. I really love this dragon model. This is really cool looking. Oh my goodness, this fight. So, you see these right here? This sword and this trinket? These are two items that I specifically was trying to get. I was able to get this sword back in the day. And this trinket. Call upon your shroud to slow your falling speed for 15 seconds, but that's not the better part. The equip bonus is your attacks and abilities have a chance to grant you ephemeral dragon wings, increasing your haste by it was a bigger stat back then, and your speed for 15 seconds. Now, I kind of get the same thing these days. Oh, by the way, may as well put them on. It's okay. I'm only... With those on, I'm just 472. It's fine. It's fine. It's not a big deal. But I will say this, though. Back in the day, having this cloak was required. You know why? If you didn't bring this cloak to this raid... Now, this was something that Blizzard realized, that some people were going into this raid without doing the cloak, and they didn't want that to happen. So Blizzard made it where if you entered this raid without the cloak, you got mind-controlled. Instantly. And there was nothing you could do about it. You had to have this cloak in order to avoid getting mind-controlled. So they made it mandatory. You had to have the cloak. So people had to go start getting the cloak if they wanted to do this raid. So let's just say... I started doing the long questline to get this cloak on multiple characters, which was a pain because there was no skip involved. Well, okay, technically that's wrong. There are a couple of little skips in place, but there's not one big skip that lets you just get the cloak. You had to do a couple of other long scenarios in order to be able to actually get the cloak on your characters. So, man, this fight... So the thing about this fight is, it's of course a dragon fight, where you had to make sure that the tank faced him away from the raid, because of course he would do a big breath, and you didn't necessarily want to be behind him because of the tail, so you had to basically keep the raid to the side of him. However, when it came to actually doing this raid on harder difficulties, that's where the fun started. So... There was a time, of course, during this fight where he would, of course, summon some of his helpers, because we know Rathian has his helpers. The thing I remember most, though, from this fight is this right here. Creeping Madness. When you're under the effects of this madness, players will gain stacks of slow while they are moving for 2.3 minutes. At 50 stacks of slow, the player will receive shadow damage every time they move. So here's the thing that I remember about this mechanic. This required a cleanse. If you had to keep monitoring your stacks, because again, every time you make a movement, you gained a stack. The only way you could remove the stacks was to get cleansed by a healer. Except, unless you had a particular ability that could remove the stacks. And this is one of the things I loved about playing a Demon Hunter during this particular tier, because Demon Hunters could cleanse these stacks on their own. You know how? Vengeful Retreat. There was a talent that you could have, or maybe it was baseline, but using Vengeful Retreat cleansed Demon Hunters of their stacks. So I felt like I could take the pressure off of my healers by just simply removing the stacks myself and being like, hey, healers, don't worry about it. I'll remove my stacks myself. You just focus on everyone else. But this did take us... That didn't make it where it was, you know, an easy fight. Searing Breath, like I said, was the tank mechanic where you had to fire that away from the raid because it would do Searing Armor, which would make it where they would take more damage from that and it would stack. If that hit other people on the tanks, they were basically dead at that point, or they took a lot of unnecessary damage and make it even harder on the healers. He would have Incineration, where they would explode, so you had to get that away, because damage would decrease the further targets were away. So someone had to get far away from the raid to make sure that very little damage was done to the rest of the raid. He would also do Burning Cataclysm, where you had to run to a specific spot, otherwise you would get hit by it, and it would basically kill you. Like, this fight was nuts. Now, to prove that I did it back in the day when it was current... Where is it? Where is it? I'm not sure why it's like... Because I'm looking for it. I'm like, wait a minute. Okay, on this character... Hold on. Because it's... Alright. So I think this character has already done this, but this was in a MOG run. I would have to show this to you on my actual character I did this on, which was my other demon hunter. But there should be a timestamp. In fact, this can be the other proof right here. You see this right here? There we go, right there. Earned by Nyalotha on May 1st, 2020. That is when this raid was current. That to me right there is one of the things I use to prove that I did this back in the day when it was current content. Now, Skitra was the easier one of the first 3 bosses you did here, and I'll talk about that when we get there. The other one was Mott, and you can see the timestamp there to prove that we at least defeated Mott, but you can see it took us a couple more months to take him down, because yeesh, that fight. A week later, we were able to take Shadhar down in Mythic, and that was our wall. That was as far as we got. So, yeah. So, but, like, add... So, the timestamp here for Skitra, add a bit more, a little earlier to that for the achievement here for Mythic Rathian. Because even though this character did join a Mogren to do this, like, Nyalotha got this in order to be able to get Skitra and Mott when it was current. I just want to point that out in case anyone thinks I'm lying that I actually did Mythic Raids when it was current content. That was the brief time that I actually got to experience what it was like to be a progression Mythic Raider. So let me go ahead and try and show off this fight a bit for you guys.
Kneel before the Black Emperor!
So the tanks had to face him, like, over here.
Searing breath.
So there's Searing Breath. It does a lot of fire damage every second.
Incineration.
It increases the damage you would take from it by another 8%. So you had the tank swap, because if you took another one of these 2 times in a row, you took a lot more damage. So that's when the tanks had to swap. Because you can see it's still stacking.
Searing breath.
So you can see how much damage I'm taking from this.
I will see.
Incineration.
There's Incineration.
Searing breath. Searing breath.
And you can see, even on normal, this is still hurting me for a lot of damage.
Searing breath. Searing breath. Gale blast.
There's Gale Blast. Yeah, everyone had to run out of that.
Cataclysm.
This is Burning Cataclysm. So he then, you see, he's going over there. So we would be like, oh, crap. And then we would have to find the spot where those things are not going to be, which would be over here. And be like, oh crap, oh crap, oh crap. Because then he would do that. And you could tell where he was going to go and where we would probably have to stand because of where he would teleport.
All will be
Incineration.
So I'm just doing this on normal, so I can't really show you some of the other heroic and mythic mechanics. But like I said, doing Vengeful Retreat like that during this fight, when we had to move around like this, doing that to take the pressure off of my healers was pretty helpful.
Incineration.
Alright, so that's basically the fight on all. What's this? Rathian.
within a vision of what was and what will be. My empire is this world's inevitable destiny.
Signal interference negated. Connection restored.
You're back! What happened? I learned that it doesn't take much for my friends to believe I betrayed them. Champions, that vision was as much for me as it was for you. N'Zoth wants us to believe that my corruption is inevitable. Doubt me if you must, but know that I will not rest until his smoldering corpse lies at my feet.
So yeah, just an illusion, because of course, we're in Nyalotha. If you don't think it's easy for N'Zoth to be able to cast some kind of illusion on us, ho ho ho. If only I could collect daggers. So the way this worked is, in order for us to progress that way, we had to take out the first 3 bosses. This is why I was talking about how, even though I can't show you the actual timestamp, except on my other main character, Nixidon, who actually did the progression here, we literally had to kill these 3. In order to get to either of these 2, we had to kill Rathian. I'm just trying to really verify and validate that I did mythic progression in this raid, darn it. So we would usually go ahead and head over here first, because the next boss, Skitra, is definitely the easier of the next 2 bosses. So if we were, say, trying to, you know... By the way, you see that Eye of the Depths? Yeah, let's just say trying to stealth through some of these was like, nope.
I need to get closer. It's too far away.
Oh man, some of these trash pulls were not nice back in the day.
That ability isn't ready yet.
Oh man. I will say though, at times it was like, oh hey, let's go ahead and pull all these so we can try and get some mythic BOEs, you know? I remember that. Oh, I remember when we were doing that. So one of the ways, instead of finding those guys, we would try and like jump up this little pathway here and try to just sneak by without pulling them.
Watch as my empire consumes your reality. Soon all will be one.
I'm out of range.
Gosh, I remember these so much. My recollection of us fighting this going through this raid so many times. And I didn't just do this on my Alliance guild. I was also part of a streamers community on the Horde side, because at this time my Horde characters were struggling to do anything in terms of an actual guild. But I found a community that could actually do stuff on my Horde characters, like my Shaman, when it came to doing this raid. Since, of course, like I said, the pandemic was happening during this raid, so a lot of people had more free time to actually do this raid during that time period. So this is Prophet Skitra. A master of illusion, Skitra delights in terrorizing his victims as he breaks their perception of reality. Those who fail to see through his deceptions become lost in Nyalotha for eternity. So, this is a thing you get to get a essence for your Heart of Azeroth. The main thing for this fight, he was not a hard fight. He really wasn't. The only thing that mattered for this fight was coordination amongst the raid group, because he would create these images, like mirror images of himself. And what you had to do is you had to put down raid markers around the room of where we had an idea of where he would create those images. And the way this would work, half the raid would see the images, and the other half of the raid would see the other images. But everybody would see one. There was one everybody would see. So we had to try and figure out, okay, we see the one over at the red marker, but we see this one at the blue marker. The other half couldn't see the blue one, but they could see the red one. And that's when once we confirmed amongst everybody, okay, that we all see the red one, we knew it was the red one. That was the main mythic mechanic when it came to this fight. So if you got the wrong images, yeah, then it would do a lot of damage to the raid. So you had to make sure that you were correct.
Your minds smell so delicious.
I didn't know my mind smelled good. This was his main thing, just doing, that ability, and then Shred Sight.
Shatters.
So you'd get that, you'd have to run away because then you'd create that. and then we'd have to burst it down, because otherwise it exploded and did a lot of damage to the raid. You can see why this is considered an easy fight, because it's kind of basic mechanics, other than the one mechanic which I'll show off here in a bit. Unless he doesn't do it on normal, which would be weird. Here we go, illusionary projection.
Reality and illusion meld into one.
Up.
No.
Okay, so he died before I could really show it off, but you saw the images pop up, right? So, again, on Mythic, one half of the raid could only see, like, 2 of those images. Or, like, 3 of those images. And then the other half could see 3, like, which was 2 false ones. Like, but only one of them was, yeah. You guys get what I'm talking about. That was the mechanic I was going to show off before he actually died. Oh, man. And now for some reason I can't loot him. Okay, whatever. I guess I'll get it in the mail later. It's because he died while he was, like, a illusion. That's funny. But yeah, he was definitely by far the easier of the first 3 bosses, which is why after we took down Rathian, we would always go to Skitra next. Because the next one, oh boy. This next one, I remember us spending quite a bit of time trying to take down this boss. Especially on Mythic. There's a reason why it took us a couple of months to take down Mott after we first took down Skitra. It was by far the harder of the 2 fights we could choose from. This is something I miss about the Heart of Azeroth, some of these really cool extra bonuses, like this one giving, like, oh, your abilities have a chance to activate Metamorphosis for a period of its base duration. As much of a pain and a grind the Heart of Azeroth was back in the day, there was some stuff you could get from it that I thought was really cool. That's one of them. Of course, it also depended on what you were playing, but again, being able to all of a sudden just get a small period of time where you got meta was pretty cool.
I don't have a target.
So, you guys remember these kind of things, right? If you went through on Courage, you probably remember these things. And these things are like a little preview of what was to come in the next fight.
Resistance is your nature. Come. Accept the inevitable.
Basically, a number of the things that you probably saw in On Courage back in the day, they decided to kind of like take to the next level in this range.
I can't do that yet.
So here's going to be the little annoying part here.
It's too far away.
Now, when soloing this, is that I have to go through and actually, like, destroy all these trash in this room just to activate Mott, because you'll see he's just a statue there. As the ancient Taki arose from the desert sands, their prophet sent about the construction of an obsidian destroyer imbued with the essence of the old gods. Driven by an insatiable thirst for magic, Mott consumed the mana of its creators once it awoke, and left their corpses to rot under the scorching sun of Old Doom.
I can't do that yet. I need to target something first. I need a target.
Oh man, this fight.
Not really.
Oh, I remember this was a very much painful fight to do back in the day.
Ready yet.
You had to have a good amount of coordination when it came to your abilities for this fight, and your cooldowns, like a good amount of raid coordination, as well as being able to meet the checks in this fight. Because it wasn't just a coordination check, it was a DPS check as well. Oh, man. Like, he had a lot of mechanics when it came to this fight.
I hunger.
So let's see if how much of this fight I can show off here. Of course, I'm just doing normal. I'm not showing you the mythic mechanics, but trust me when I say some of the mythic mechanics in this fight were kind of nuts. Like, Ancient Curse. He inflicts players with an ancient curse, turning players to stone and slowing them by 15%. When the curse is removed, the stone will shatter, inflicting damage to all allies. If the curse remains after 24 seconds, the player is instantly killed. So, you're people that could be able to say have the curse and remove curses had to be on top of it. There was also Drain Essence, that was a heroic mechanic. He drained life and mana from players, inflicting shadow damage and burning mana every second for 8 seconds. While the spell lasts, Mott gains mana every second. Upon removal, the spell would erupt, inflicting shadow damage and burning mana from allies within 8 yards. So if you had a mana character, you were having a difficult time in this fight.
It's too far away.
More mana.
Just very hungry for lots and lots of mana.
Devour mana. Darkness gathers.
So that would drop and you would get silence. That would create that dark manifestation, which had a absorb shield.
Must consume.
So you would try and drop these in specific places.
Devoured Abyss. Devoured Abyss.
Oh, that right there, the Annihilation? That's what these were for. So in order to survive Stygian Annihilation, you had to stand in these pools here in order to survive it. Otherwise, you were just dead. So there was coordination, like, okay, we'll drop the circles here and here. So that, and then once you started casting, everyone was like, quick, get inside! Yes, you were silenced, but you were also being saved from Stygian Annihilation.
Must consume.
Oh yeah, he also had Black Wings where he did this big knockback and which also did a cone of massive damage. Alright, so he's almost at full mana. When he does that, I'll be able to show you guys one of the other mechanics, but yeah. You can see that does a lot of damage.
Skin of stone.
So, see. Obsidian Shatter. A minute, right? So he gets Obsidian's skin. So he has to lose mana instead of health and inflict 100% of incoming damage back on the attacker's arcane damage. So you couldn't just go all out with your damage. You had to kind of like, okay, we'll do damage, then we stop and heal up, and then we do more damage, then we stop and heal up, and then we do more damage, because you couldn't just do all out because you were also doing damage to yourself. Because he's not losing health when he does this, he's losing mana. You see?
Hunger.
And then you would continue the fight as normal. So that was the other big part of that fight, was managing the statue part.
Devour mana.
Because if you didn't break, or make him lose 100% mana when that happened, he would just do this big eruption that would wipe the raid. And that's basically the fight, at least on normal. Again, then there's those other mechanics I told you about, which were just like, oh my gosh, this fight. I hope you can see why it took us a couple more months to take down Mott after we took down Skitra. Because, geez Louise, this fight.
Annihilation.
Devoured Abyss. Devoured Abyss. Devoured Abyss.
Huh, that axe. So I remember, I think the corruption on this axe was it gave you a good amount of extra armor, which if you were, say, on a Death Knight, this was a pretty good two-handed axe to get back in the day. I remember wanting my DK to actually get this axe back then. Again, I can't show you what the actual effect is anymore. I'm sure you can look up what they used to be, but I just can't show you them in the game anymore. But I just remember that was one of those axes that you probably wanted to get when you were a DK back then. But oh my gosh, Mott. So he also dropped this trinket, which I think I got. Yeah, I did. Your skin hardens, absorbing damage for 8 seconds. Taking magic damage increases the remaining absorb and the duration by 2 seconds. I don't remember if this was a decent trinket back in the day. It seems like on paper it might be, but I really don't remember.
I'm out of range.
But there's a reason why anytime I now hear things like, you know, mana, I always just in the back of my mind hear Mott saying, more mana! Or skin of stone. I remember hearing that and like, oh crap, here comes the statue phase.
Not ready yet.
Because I wanted to go all out during that to break, break his shield, which, I know is like draining his mana. But at that same time, I was like, I can't go all out because if I do, I'm basically gonna kill myself. By the way, I think this is the biggest raid in this expansion. We got a lot of bosses to go through. We've just only gone through 3, and we have quite a few more to go through. So, yeah, we're probably gonna be here for a while. So, I don't know, get comfortable, grab a drink or something, because we're gonna be here for a little while. The obsidian claw pet. Yep. If you wanted that pet, take down Mott. By the way, for a number of these things, you can't just skip the trash because you literally have to kill the trash to open the passageway forward. What I remember about this trash is these guys here. Opening the gateway to the beyond, which would spawn more. So you had to take them down, otherwise more of those void spawns would show up. And it was like, quick, 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 get the gatekeepers, quick, quick!
I can't do that yet.
Gosh, I'm telling you guys, I remember the trash and the bosses in this raid so much because of how often I did this raid. On both factions, by the way. Like I said, we had a pandemic we had to stay home and, deal with, so we were constantly, playing WoW in this raid because, well, had to stay home.
I need to target something first.
Protocol requires localized sanitation prior to anchor deployment.
Aye, you'll have to clear out any beasties so that the anchor can be placed. Once you have them all set, we'll take the fight to Nyalotha.
I personally think this is a really cool, design and such. Like, the skybox, just, wow. So you see Vexiona there? She'll be a boss later. But the reason I bring her up is because she is the AOTC mount for this raid. I wanted that mount so bad. I actually made a video showing Turning the Quest where I wasn't sure if I was going to actually be a part of a heroic Nyalotha kill, because I had never been a part of that before. I basically learned about AOTCs and Cutting Edge when this raid was out, is when I first learned about it. Especially when I learned, what an AOTC is and what an AOTC mount is. So, one night I saw that the group Perky Pugs was doing a stream to help people get the mount. So I thought, what the heck, I'll just go ahead and have one of my characters join and see if I can get it. I actually got lucky and was picked by Perky Pugs. So I actually got the mount courtesy of Perky Pugs. However, later, Now, I know that this shows my shaman getting it, but trust me when I say a little later, like either a week or a couple weeks later, I got it on the Demon Hunter on my Alliance Guild when we actually, like, legit earned our heroic kill on N'Zoth. And the rest of my guild also got that mount. Just to prove it. There it is. The Uncorrupted Voidwing. The quest lore was that this was a hatchling that Vexiona had made and was waiting to hatch to be turned into a loyal servant of N'Zoth. But after we kill N'Zoth in Heroic, we find this and we take it to Rathian, and he helps hatch it free of corruption and notices it that it's kind of like attached itself to us. So he's like, I'm going to entrust you with this one. And that's when we get to have it as our mount. And it's one of my favorite AOTC mounts I've ever gotten. I love using it on my Shadow Priest. Because doesn't it seem like the kind of like mount a Shadow Priest would use?
I'm out of range.
So this is where the raid now also gets an opportunity to kind of like split in directions for you to choose where you wanted to go.
I need to get closer.
And what we're going to do next, actually, is a boss that I remember our raid leader did not like and did not want to do. I showed Vexiona flying around. We're going to head in the direction where she's going to be like the last boss of that wing. So there's 3 wings to this portion of the fight before we can make our progression towards N'Zoth himself. One is down that way. I like to call that the Gross Wing. Over there is what I call the Hive Wing, where a certain familiar face is waiting for us up there as the boss of that wing. And then the next wing is through here, where Vexiona awaits. However, in order to get to Vexiona, there's one other person we have to take down, and we actually encountered her in the quest line that led up to this raid that had us get our legendary cloak. In order for us to get our legendary cloak, we had to go back to old Black Rock Mountain.
It's too far away.
And Rathian used the remains of his siblings. That would be Onyxia, as well as
Anchor point detected within temple interior. Recommendation: proceed with caution.
Caution! We don't do caution. Storm that temple and send those cultists screaming to the abyss!
So we go back into Blackwing Descent, and we find the remains of both Onyxia and Nefarian, basically after the events of Blackwing Descent, and we use them to make our new cloak. Well, when we went there, we encountered somebody. Also, we're going to see another familiar face here. If you're probably wondering, what happened to Queen Azshara after the events of the Eternal Palace when N'Zoth got free? Well... yeah, N'Zoth was like, alright, it's my turn now. You played me, and now it's my turn to have some fun with you.
Address me as Queen! Insolence only prolongs your agony. You will break, or I will carve out your defiant tongue!
More likely, Zanesh. Azeroth's champions will be the ones to silence you!
Aww, Azshara.
Release me! Only I possess the means of defeating N'Zoth!
Really? Well, why didn't you just simply tell us that when we were in your palace? So, Azshara had her own plan in mind where she wasn't really intending on having us do that. She was planning to release N'Zoth so she could kill him herself. She didn't expect, well, us to really interfere with her plans. She didn't plan for this to happen. Now she's like, okay, now I know how good you champions are. So maybe you're the ones who are going to be able to take down N'Zoth instead of me.
I'm out of range.
Your cry shall echo for eternity!
Oh boy. Oh boy. Beard, this is for you, man. Wherever you are, if you ever watch this. That was the name of our raid leader. His nickname was Beard. It was actually Fat Beard, but, you know, we just called him Beard. Part of the reason why is because he had a Kultiran monk as a brewmaster, which, you know, was a Kultiran with a big beard, so we always just called him Beard. This is the character we met when we were getting our cloak. Dark Inquisitor Zanesh. Few can resist the whispers of the old gods, but those who do find themselves at the mercy of Dark Inquisitor Zanesh, a cruel and sadistic torturer. Zanesh prides herself on slowly carving the sanity away from those in her charge until all that remains is unwavering devotion to N'Zoth. So she's trying to break Ajara to basically have her be a mindless, loyal minion to N'Zoth. Oh, this fight. This is the boss that we refer to as the soccer boss, or the football boss, depending on where part of the world you live in. Because she had a mechanic that was basically that. It was soccer. We had to direct an orb into like a portal, or basically a soccer ball into a goal. I remember seeing clips of people testing this in Mythic, and they would get the orb in there and they would shout, "Goal!" It was such a big running gag and joke that this was the soccer boss, Zanesh. And our raid leader, Beard, he hated this boss. When we were deciding who to do progression on after Mott, he refused to do Zanesh unless we absolutely reached that point and had no choice. He was willing to go through the other two wings first before we even got to this one. He did not like doing Zanesh. Oh, man. So we never actually pulled her on Mythic. We could have, but he refused to pull her on Mythic. We did do this fight on Heroic, though, obviously. And gosh, I remember, like, we had to stand in certain places for this. The ritual obelisk, summoning the obelisk to create a ritual. Yeah, there was a bit of coordination when it came to this fight because you had to be coordinated to direct the orbs into the goals. Oh man, this fight.
Outcry the screams from your flesh!
She, of course, is wearing one of the sets that you could get from this raid.
Soul
You
Flame.
are mine to torment! Your agony!
So it would make one of those, which is going to do these pulls and do a lot of damage, so we had to get away because it would do quite a bit of damage.
Darkness!
So yeah, there was a lot of, oh, we have to move over here, now we have to move over here, we have to move over here. There was a lot of that in this fight. Alright, soon I'll show you guys the Void Ritual. And that will basically be the fight on normal. I probably could have done this on the Heroic to really show you guys some of the Heroic mechanics we had to deal with. Just because I remember, like, the experience of doing these fights. Alright, you see these?
To command!
One had to stand in each one. Otherwise... And then we had to... So, you see this on my head?
Darkness!
This is me having to now... Okay, I have to go over here. Now I have to touch the orb.
Near me!
Soul
You are
Flame.
mine to torment!
I couldn't direct the orb up there because otherwise it does damage. So what I have to do now is now hit the orb in a certain direction. Alright. Let's see. Did it get in the goal?
Your anger!
No! And that's it. So the three people chosen, as you saw, that stood in those little circles, got those things on their head, and they were the only ones who could see and interact with the orb to direct it into the goal, because if they didn't, we would wipe, basically. So that's basically the fight. And gosh, I remember that so much. And Like I said, that's why this boss became known as the soccer boss, or the football boss, depending on what part of the world you lived in. I'm an American, so I always refer to it as soccer, you know, but... Hey, Ajara.
We fulfilled our end of the bargain, Ajara. Now honor yours.
Mind your tone, whelpling. A queen keeps her promises. Listen closely, as I will only say this once. For all his bluster, N'Zoth was ever the weakest of his kin. One vestige of their power yet remains that can be turned against him. I would have driven this blade into his foul heart myself, had you not disrupted my plans. No matter. Nyalotha is yours, mortals. Strike true. Should your first blow fail, you will not survive to attempt another. Now go and do what you will. I tire of intermediaries and heralds. The true throne of power beckons, and I intend to claim it.
Ajara has a fondness for games. I will examine this dagger for signs of treachery. But for now, let us continue.
And we have not seen Ajara since. I'm not sure where she is or what she was referring to when she talked about that throne of power. But I have a feeling that's not going to be the last time we see Queen Ajara. I'd like to think that Blizz has something in mind for when we're going to see her next, but we'll just have to wait and see. So this next one... oh boy.
Gather, servants of the void! It is time to receive my gift.
Vexiona.
Those who are worthy shall be remade through its power!
New anchor point detected. Recommendation: terminate void disruption.
If Vexiona and her dragonflight wish to be cast into darkness, then let us help them on their way.
Rathian! I look forward to reuniting you with your father.
Obsessively wielding the power that N'Zoth has granted her, Vexiona has amassed a cult of worshippers who covet the gifts of the void. From high atop her temple within the Black Empire, she transforms her most devout followers into unstoppable horrors. So like I said, because we never pulled Zanesh on Mythic, we never got to experience the Vexiona fight either on Mythic. We did, of course, do this fight on Heroic. I remember this fight being a little, like, chaotic at times. She, of course, is somewhat of a dragon fight, where she, especially once we get to the last part. The first part has to do with some ad management and some other things as well, but, yeah. First, we had to, of course, clear this trash before we could even pull her.
I can't do that
yet. You see those Void Descendants there? Those are the ads that we're going to have to also deal with for this fight as well.
It's too
and they are nasty.
I need a target.
Very nasty enemies.
That ability isn't ready yet.
As you can see, once he shows up, Vexiona does as well. He's part of the fight.
You defile this temple!
Twilight Breath.
So she's got Twilight Breath, which does that.
Your spirit shatters!
She casts Despair on you. Void Corruption, which constantly does damage. Encroaching Shadows, which will leave behind another pool of residue. You'll see there's a few of that in this raid.
Encroaching Shadows.
Servants arise! Your master calls!
and you'll see more of these fanatic cultists show up.
I will tear your soul to shreds!
Shadowy residue.
I'm gonna try and see if I can show off stage 2 of this fight, where she does the big breath.
Encroaching shadows.
Come on, you can catch me. Come on.
Your master calls!
More cultists emerge from a portal.
Encroaching shadows.
My chosen! Destroy this!
Shadowy residue. Shadowy residue.
Succumb to darkness!
Twilight destiny.
So we would see, okay, she's over there, which means she's going to go down this way. So everyone head this way. Now she's going to go to the other side.
Shadowy residue.
Go to the other side.
Residue. Twilight decimator.
She's going down the middle. Pick a side. But don't drop your pool right in the path.
Twilight decimator. Shadowy residue. Encroaching shadows.
So yeah, quite a bit of coordination was needed for this fight. As you can see.
I shall rip you apart myself!
Encroaching shadows. Twilight breath. Shadowy residue. Shadowy residue.
Once she reaches 40% health, that's when the last part of this fight starts.
Twilight breath. Shadowy residue. Shadowy residue. Shadowy residue. Encroaching shadow. Shadowy residue.
The full power of the void!
Shadowy residue.
Stage 3.
Twilight breath.
She gets empowered abilities. More void corruption.
Shadowy residue. Shadowy residue. Shadows.
Light surges!
Shadowy residue. Twilight.
Terrifying presence reduces our haste by 100%.
Shadowy residue. Encroaching shadows. Shadowy twilight breath.
So at this point, it was like, okay, let's finish her off.
Shadowy residue.
Because otherwise it's going to get really... yeah.
Shadowy residue.
The void! This is not my destiny!
Void corruption eradicated. Initiating anchor materialization.
Good riddance. Vexiona would see all dragons kneel before N'Zoth.
Well done, champions! Each anchor brings us closer to unleashing the power of the Forge against N'Zoth.
So next we're going to head to the Hive Wing. Because this is the direction we decided to go. Well, there's a boss down there that we did take down, Shadhar. After we did Shadhar, Beard said, alright, let's go ahead and try to take down the next boss in the Hive Wing. And this is where we hit our wall in Mythic. That's why you had to burst down those eyes right there, because they would summon that big ad. Hey, I got the mementos.
Potential anchor point detected in immediate vicinity.
Good. The sooner you place these anchors, the sooner we bring down
I can't
N'Zoth.
do that yet.
The Hive will devour you.
I shall peel the flesh from your bones!
This is the hive mind. Locked in a contest of wills, the generals of Khazir and Tegris constantly vie for dominance over their fellow Akir. As they wrest control away from one another, the hive shifts its tactics and obeys each of their commands with fervent loyalty. This is where we hit our wall because the DPS that was needed for this fight was nuts, especially in Mythic. There was also a massive healing check because of the amount of constant damage that these guys would constantly do. There was a lot when it came to this fight. I'll try and show as much as I can.
I need to get closer.
Check IIS's hive mind control.
Will blister.
No
lots of drones. Until you had to avoid.
Echoing
void claims all.
Numbing Nova.
Blister.
Nullification blast. Spawn acidic here.
Devour weak.
The roly-polies. Yep, I remember those. And some of these drones, the darters, we had to make sure that there were certain types of like ads that spawned. You absolutely had to make sure would get oh hey, a BOE would get focused and you know, DPS down by the raid, because otherwise, yeah, it was a wipe at that point. You had to deal with the two bosses as well as all the ads that would spawn, different types of ads, avoid various different things. Like I said, this was a massive DPS coordination and healing check. And that's why this was our wall in Mythic. Partly because we also started having people not show up and we started getting less people. We couldn't get a full 20-man group, and at that point we were just like, okay, we've hit our wall, guys. We got 4 down in Mythic, that's great, but it's time to call it.
Spawn acidic here. Dark reconstitution.
Flesh!
The next fight, I remember in particular, because there were a couple of trinkets you could get from it, which were a set. And if you got them both together, it was really good. And I actually remember getting them. And I was just like, yo! Because I remember they were a really cool set of trinkets.
I need to target something first.
But here's a familiar face.
Error. Corruption at critical levels. Anchor placement terminated.
Raden? It can't be. You're a servant of the Titans, of Azeroth herself.
N'Zoth opened my eyes to his great truth. He freed me from the narrow confines of the Titan's path. Come, I will reveal the Master's glory and liberate you from darkness.
Raden, the Despoiled. As he bravely fought to save the Chamber of Heart, Raden was pulled into Nyalotha, where he has fallen victim to N'Zoth's whispers. The despair he harbored for so long has overwhelmed the last of his hope, rendering his corruption complete. Now, the former High Keeper will stop at nothing to do the old god's bidding. Oh my goodness. So this fight, I remember. Now, again, we never got to experience it on Mythic, and there was an extra mechanic that you had to deal with. So the main thing when it comes to this fight is there's two different things you have to manage and deal with, which was Vita and Void, or Vida and Void, but I just called it Vita. Essence of Vita and Essence of Void. And managing that was critical to the fight, especially on Heroic. Now, on Mythic, there was apparently an extra mechanic called Nightmare. I never got to experience it firsthand. Now, the loot that would drop were these right here. This is what I was talking about, these two trinkets. Void Twisted Titan Shard and Vita Charged Titan Shard. So, Vita gave you more haste, and it had a chance to improve your haste, as well as your party members' haste, for 15 seconds. The Void one would shroud you in void, absorbing damage, and increase your critical strike. Now, if you had both of them together, while you were here in Nyalotha, your spells and abilities would have a chance to draw out orbs of them towards you, and collecting them would increase your main stat by a certain amount for 15 seconds. So it was encouraged to get both of these trinkets and then use them in the raid, because you would get benefit from it. And I remember having that at some point. I thought this was just really cool. So I'll try and show off this I'll try and show off this fight how I can. It's obviously going to be a little different since I don't have the bodies in here to help properly show it off, but I did try to show it off back in the day when it was current. So again, if you want to see how these fights were in a full group, I do have videos showing that off when it was current. But just look at how far he's been corrupted. You can see like the void on his chest there. It's turned one of his arms into a tentacle. You can see it in his face. Yeah.
You only delay the inevitable. Behold, the fabric of creation.
So those essences, we had to choose which one to DPS down, because we couldn't let him get one of them. So let's say I get Vita, and he absorbs Void. He then gets Void Empowered.
Call Void Hunter.
And you had to alternate which one he would get. And each one time he would get empowered by one of them, it would do something different. Because he's empowered by the Void, he gets this Void Hunter to show up. And it would do those things there, and I think somebody had to run in and soak it, otherwise the raid would get hit by it. So I remember at times we were like, oh crap, somebody go soak that! And you couldn't keep soaking it because, as you see, like, well, it would, yeah. You get this stack of Vita. Now let me show you what happens when he soaks, Vita. So now he's empowered by Vita.
Call Crackling Stalker.
Lightning given life.
That would get a Crackling Stalker out here. But you had to choose one. You couldn't let him absorb both, otherwise it was basically a wipe at that point, because he would just be so strong, he would just be wrecking us. And this would be the case for this fight, basically, throughout, up until you got to the final stage of the fight, which I believe is when you reach a certain point of health. I'm trying to remember when that was.
The fabric of creation!
So, let's see what happens when he absorbs both. This is what happens.
Your strength falters.
He's empowered by both, which just makes him extremely strong. And now you have to also deal with both ads and both mechanics at the same time. And yeah, it was a wipe at that point. So you had to make sure the group focused and alternated the two essences. Alright, here we go. So yeah, this is when you would pop Bloodlust and try to DPS him down, because this was the big DPS check part of the fight right here. Because now he has Ruin, where he's constantly doing damage to players every couple of seconds.
Void eruption.
And I believe it would continue to grow. He would also do this. And now he has lingering energies because he said, I need more power, which means he would keep doing that and he would just continue to get stronger and his damage done would increase and stack. This is why you then, at this point, once you got here, this is when you had to use all your cooldowns and bloodlust and burst him down before he wiped the raid. Before he was just getting to the point where he was hitting your tank so hard they could not survive. Hey, I got both of the trinkets.
Corruption.
Let's put him on for old time's sake.
Deploying anchor.
Sorry, Raden.
Raden is a keeper of Azeroth. A great hero. But he lost hope. N'Zoth twisted his despair, and that corruption festered within him. Take a lesson from this, champions. Do not let N'Zoth wield your fears against you.
Good fortune to our friends.
Now, for the final wing, before we can reach N'Zoth. So we would have to go down this little ramp here and deal with these things here in order to reach the next part. And there, of course, there is...
New anchor location detected within aperture.
Well, aperture is certainly the polite way to put it.
No kidding. Like I said, this is why I call this the gross wing. This is where all the, like, gross bug and, like, other things are. But there's also going to be yet someone else familiar here at the end of this wing. And boy, do I have some things to share about that. You'll see there's living blood, there are parasites, yeah. Gross, 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 gross.
All you witness is my flesh.
Familiar voice? We've heard that voice before. So.
You enter as parasites, but will feed my perfection.
We'll get to him in a bit. This is Shadhar, the Insatiable. One of N'Zoth's most nightmarish creations, Shadhar the Insatiable feasts on the corrupted carcasses that the old god's minions discard into its domain. Tormented by ceaseless hunger, Shadhar's body twists and mutates with every corpse that it devours. This was the last boss we were able to face and kill on Mythic before we called it. So this boss had a couple of main tank mechanics, as in like swapping certain, like when he would do certain things, you couldn't take two in a row, so you had to swap the tanks. He also had those things there at the end of the room that he would feast on that we would have to deal with. He also had some other things like the spit. Crush and Dissolve is basically the main tank swap mechanic that was here. In Mythic, he had something called Hungry. He becomes hungry as the fight progresses. At 10 applications, he would become insatiable and gain uncontrollably ravenous, increasing the damage on by 250%. Feeding Shadhar a tasty morsel would reduce his stack of Hungry. So this was the main thing. This was the big DPS check that we had to do in order to take this boss down, as well as manage the tasty morsels. When a miasma would explode, it would leave behind morsels. Feeding him would reduce how hungry it was. So, but it would put slimy residue upon us. And these are the different carapace and... yeah, so each point of the fight, 66% health, 33% health, is when he would consume a carcass, which would change his abilities and progress the fight. There's the miasma with the tasty morsel. Yep. So this really wasn't that tough of a fight for us back in the day. which is one of the reasons why we wanted to go ahead and do this fight before we did some of the other ones, because we thought this fight was less of a pain and less chaotic compared to some of the other ones. Like, this is why we chose this guy over Hivemind and Zanesh when it came to our progression, because we really didn't think it was that bad. We felt like we had a decent amount of, say, DPS in order to deal with this guy. There's the spit you had to avoid. It still hit me somehow, even though I stepped out of the way. There's Dissolve. And there's Crush. Like I said, you couldn't take 2 of those in a row. The tanks had to swap that. Also, there's the breath attack he does.
Fixate.
So if you're wondering why you couldn't do that, by the way, there's those things to fixate on you. So Crush would reduce the target's armor, inflicting physical damage, and increase the damage taken from Dissolve by 400%.
Debilitating Spit.
That's why you couldn't take both of those in a row as a tank. You had to swap for those mechanics.
Breath.
So soon he will reach 66%, and you'll see him go after one of the carcasses.
Fixate.
Yep. So now he's going to go feed on that. Eat the carcass. So if you got fixated, you had to make sure you took that away from the raid so it didn't explode and hurt the raid. So you see now he gets the a little bit more empowered, and abilities for the fight will change a bit.
Debilitating Spit.
He now gets Entropic Mantle and Entropic Breath.
Fixate.
Then we get to 33%.
Entropic Breath.
So now he's going to go eat the other carcass. And he will get Noxious Mantle and Bubbling Breath.
Frenzy.
Which just further strengthen and empower those. Also at 30% health, he gets Frenzy, which increases damage dealt by 25%. You can see why this was a big DPS check. He's also now constantly doing damage every 3 seconds.
Bubbling Breath.
So yeah, it was a check, but we were confident enough that we could handle it, and we did.
Cut and tear my flesh, but wounds are trivial. I am beyond your abilities.
However, the next fight, we were like, yeah, we're not doing that on Mythic. The next fight, oh gosh, oh my gosh, the next fight. Oh my goodness. So you see all these tendrils and tentacles here? Yeah, they were going to be critical for the next fight.
Darkness within. Step forward and accept my embrace.
Drestagath. The grotesque amalgam of flesh known as Drestagath slumbered beneath Nyalotha for millennia until being awakened by N'Zoth's return. Now she rises like a revolting boil, ready to burst and spread her vile pestilence across Azeroth. Oh my gosh, Drestagath. Oh. I remember this fight was a pain for us at times on Heroic when we were doing our Heroic progression for this raid. Oh man, this fight required quite a bit of coordination when it came to which tendrils and such to deal with in order to actually kill this boss. Because you can't just straight up kill the boss, because she has apparent regeneration. She regenerates extremely fast, healing every 5 seconds, and damage caused by the players afflicted by voice-infused ichor cannot be healed. So she will constantly heal whatever damage we do, unless we take down a certain tendril that gives us what it said, the void-infused ichor. Once you get that, you had to then go ahead and do your damage because it would expire in 30 seconds. And whatever damage you did while you had that, she can't heal. That was how you progressed in this fight. We never pulled it on Mythic because we were like, no, we're not doing this fight on Mythic. That's crazy. And I'll show you why, if you want to get a decent idea as to why this fight was such a nightmare to go through on Heroic. So see that? See the constant healing she's doing? So then there are these guys. These guys were the key to the fight.
Entrophic crash.
That's the Ichor right there. So now any damage I do to her while I have this is what would actually progress killing her. However, then you had these other things. You had this tentacle over here,
Void grip. Void grip. Void splash.
which dropped those.
Void grip. Void grip.
You had the maws, which would
Void grip.
do those, the acid splash, and you had the eyes.
Void grip. Throws of agony.
So we had to split the raid up to go deal with the different tendrils so they wouldn't wipe the group, because it would also do that, the Void Glare, which Drestigath would also do.
Throws of agony. Void infused ichor.
So I hope you have an idea now as to why this fight was such a pain and nightmare to deal with.
Entrophic crash. Void infused ichor.
I made that look easy, but trust me, that was a pain.
Flesh, but I am eternal.
That fight was such a pain back in the day. I may have to, because I'm worried my mic is going to start cracking here any second. If it starts popping and cracking, I may have to split this into multiple parts, because restarting my capture card is like the only way I can fix that.
Warning. Reduction of contamination required for anchor deployment.
You will never be rid of me.
Hello again, Il'gynoth. You remember him, right? We first encountered him back in the Emerald Nightmare. This was our first encounter with Il'gynoth, and he had quite a few interesting things to share with us. Well, when he returned here in Nyalotha, he had some more interesting things to share with us. Following its defeat in the Emerald Nightmare, Il'gynoth retreated into the depths of Nyalotha to regain its strength. Now it has fused with the city's architecture and spreads across the Black Empire like a creeping infestation. As Il'gynoth's corrupting flesh grows ever larger, so does its power. So I want to share with you the new interesting quotes and whispers that Il'gynoth decided to share with us when we reached him here in Nyalotha. He had some interesting quotes from the Emerald Nightmare, but he decided to share with some more with us this time. Before the last shadow falls, the Father of Sleep shall savor his feast. The next one. The Golden One claims a vacant throne. The crown of light will bring only darkness. The third quote. When their mistress beckons, 9 ravens take flight. Each seeks a prize to earn her favor. The fourth quote. The vassal of life disguises treachery. Beware the eyes of green. The fifth quote. 5 lanterns now darkened. The flame they seek will light the master's way. The sixth quote. The cunning ones kneel before 6 masters, but serve only one. And the final quote. The blind queen wields a scepter of bone. From the deep, she calls forth doom. As you can imagine, many people speculated a lot when these quotes came out. So much theorizing and speculation happened when it came to a lot of these different quotes. I'll let you look up what people thought on your own if you want. You can find that on Wowhead as well as Reddit. All the different kinds of speculation such that people had about Il'gynoth's various interesting quotes he decided to share with us when we returned to face him here in Nyalotha. Now, this fight, oh boy, this was a fight I distinctly have personal memories of. This was a turning point for me, Il'gynoth was. This is also not a very beloved fight by a lot of players, and I understand why. We have to kill him multiple times in this fight. You see those right there? Those are going to contain organs. I know it's gross. Organs that we have to take down one by one in order to actually fully kill Il'gynoth. And so there's a thing, we have to kill him, we have to avoid getting hit by a big frontal he does, there's some ads that will spawn over there. When we bring him down to low health, that's when he disappears and those rooms open up where we have to kill the organs. We have to do it 3 times, and then we can kill him a 4th and final time. The thing I remember about this fight, though, is the heroic mechanic. Touch of the Corruptor. Il'gynoth bends players to his will, charming them for 1 minute. During this time, players under his influence will attempt to spread the touch of the Corruptor to other players. Reducing afflicted players to 30% health will remove this effect. Yes, it's a mind control mechanic. This is the mechanic that made us have to bring down the raid size to reduce the amount of people that were affected by the mind control. Because if we had a big raid group, more people got mind controlled, and if you touch someone else, you got them mind controlled. At the time, I remember some people making jokes that because we were in a pandemic, they were joking that the mind control was like, oh, be careful, don't touch other people, otherwise you're going to spread, because they were making jokes, It was ill taste, I know. But you know how raid groups are sometimes. Anyways, the reason I personally remember this is because this was a massive turning point for me as a player. At the time, I was not very knowledgeable as a raider. I was still learning things that nobody had ever taught me. And I was not doing well as a DPS. I was really struggling to actually do decently on DPS. I was very much often at the bottom of the meter. I was doing less damage than our tank, who was the raid leader. And we were struggling with the mind control mechanic. So he said, okay, here's what I'm going to do. We're going to do one more pull. If we wipe on this next pull, I'm going to reduce the raid size for us to deal with this mechanic better and kill the boss. I want everyone to know. He was cool about it. He wasn't a jerk about it. He was like, I want everyone to know if I ask you to sit out, it's nothing personal, okay? But the way I'm going to decide this is the ones who are not doing that much damage, if you do less damage than the tank, I'm going to have to ask you guys to sit out. Again, nothing personal. We wiped on the next pull. He whispered me and asked me to step out. I remember feeling very low at that point. Feeling very down. I felt like I had let the group down to the point where I could have been doing more, and I wanted to do more, and I just, at the time, didn't know how. It was a humiliating moment for me as a player. The following day, I asked some people, including our guildmaster, who was one of our main healers. We call her Donna. I reached out to them and I was like, guys, I need to get better. I need to know what I'm doing wrong. What can I do to get better? So they tried to help me figure out what to do better. They noticed that I had some pieces of gear with sockets that didn't have any gems in them. I had not had anyone ever tell me before about how to socket gems into my gear that had sockets in them. These were things no one had ever told me about. I had never learned. So once they realized there were a number of things I didn't know and therefore had not done with my gear, such as I didn't have any enchantments, I didn't have any gems, and I was basically all over the place when it came to my stats. So they went and grabbed some things from the guild bank, gave them to me and told me how to utilize them, how to put gems in the sockets, how to put enchantments on, and then we went to a dungeon to test, like, trying to do some of these things differently. And right away there was a noticeable difference in terms of how I was performing, especially when it came to the amount of damage I was doing. And I've never been asked to sit out since. It was a massive turning point for me as a player in terms of learning things about how to be better as a raider and a player overall that I had never learned before. So, in a way, I have Il'gynoth to thank for that. So thank you, Il'gynoth. You gave me a massive turning point as a player because of your mind control mechanic.
The feed begins.
Eye of Insult.
That's the big blast he does. This is why the tank had to face him this way, while everyone else had to stand behind him or to the side of him, so you wouldn't get hit by that.
I see the corruption within.
Because if you got hit by that, you were dead.
Corruption.
Unless you were the tank. Also this. So you had to also make sure that if you got targeted by that, you were not making it all over the place, because that I don't think is going to go away. I think that stays there permanently. So if you were getting targeted by that, you had to make sure that you were, like, I don't know, doing a little circle just to try and make sure that you didn't get hit by it, but also that you weren't spreading it all over the room so we could actually have room to stand on you know, for the fight, you know?
I see the corruption.
Also, he does that if nobody's within melee range, Living Chamber.
Morass of Corruption. Morass
Also, if you stand in this, you get silenced. Yeah, there was a lot to this fight.
Morass of Corruption.
But yeah, Living Chamber is basically what he casts if nobody's in melee range.
Flesh.
So, yeah, he goes away,
Morass of Corruption.
and now we have to take out one of these organs, which is doing this thing called pumping blood, which will continue to spawn ads. Which we had to manage, and yeah.
Perfection.
And that right there is one of those things that speaks to Il'gynoth's character. When we do that, he's like, "You dare scar perfection!" He has quite the ego and really does see himself as being perfect. But yeah, that's the first time we killed him. Now we have to kill him again.
Morass of Corruption.
In order for us to then go ahead and get back over here and fight it, even though the eyes, they're still there. There's that Blood of Nyalotha, which will spawn. Now it's not there. And it will now continue to spawn that after, you know, we have taken out those organs. So even though those organs are down, it's going to continue to spawn those bloods, which will fixate, and yeah.
Expose rot.
So yeah, there's the Blood of Nyalotha where it spawns, and if it hit, you know, yeah, it would, you had to definitely deal with this.
Perfect. Pass beyond. Shall drown in the dark.
Yep.
Deployed. Calibrating.
I've heard that fight was even worse on Mythic. Again, we never even reached it because we...
Proximity to target required for ensured accuracy. Insufficient power for subsequent activations.
What Mother means is, we only get one shot at this. The closer you get to Nyalotha, the better our odds of hitting him.
Understood, Magni. Nyalotha will answer for what he has done to Azeroth, and to my father.
Many farewell.
like I said, we never even bothered with Dressagath, so we never got to see Il'gynoth Mythic. So now that goes down because we've taken care of the other 3 wing bosses. If you have the skiff, you can just avoid them and just go straight to N'Zoth here. Now you're probably going, wait a minute, we haven't seen a thing for a skiff. Well, that's because it's up ahead.
I'm out of range.
You guys ready to go pay a visit to N'Zoth himself? There's the Mythic Mount.
Do you trust me?
No more barriers stand between us and N'Zoth. Are you ready to finish this? I'm ready.
The Black Talon. To use the Chamber's weapons against N'Zoth, we need to get inside his husk. Leave this part to me. After all, dramatic entrances are my specialty.
Insolent whelpling! You desecrate that which you were bred to serve!
Angry, are we? And after I tried so hard to impress you with my dagger handiwork.
Warning. Corruption levels exceeding measurable parameters. Recalculating.
That does not sound particularly encouraging, Mother.
You will break like your father before you.
N'Zoth's rage seems fixated upon me, champions. Perhaps you can turn that to our advantage.
The carapace of N'Zoth. At the center of Nyalotha stands a dread mountain of flesh, teeming with eyes and tendrils of unfettered corruption. Madness itself seeps from the writhing madness, eroding the sanity of all who approach it. This is the heart of the Black Empire, N'Zoth's seat of power, the body of a god. So this is now where the cloak is actually going to play a role in this fight. So I had an interesting experience with this fight. When we were experimenting on our progression for this fight in Heroic, one of the things we were having a difficulty with was all these ads that would spawn from the tentacles that would drop. the tanks were busy dealing with that thing, but the ads would constantly spawn and deal with some of our other members of the raid. So, believe it or not, we actually experimented this fight with a third tank. And I volunteered to be the third tank. Keep in mind at this time that I had actually spent quite a bit of time playing Vengeance Demon Hunter instead of Havoc. So I was quite familiar with how Vengeance worked during BFA.
It's too far away.
So when we were experimenting with our progression, they literally had me become the third tank just to deal with the ads. Now, again, this was also at that time when I was not really doing that much damage as Havoc, because I hadn't really learned how to do that yet. I was still learning how to play Havoc. So the two main tanks would deal with that, while the tentacles that would spawn during this fight, at least this first part of the fight, would drop and spawn ads, and my job was to grab all the ads and just have them aggro me and have everyone focus them down while the tanks would focus on this thing.
I need to get closer.
So yeah, now we get our sandy bar.
Magic bomb.
And we get this cooldown here. And you can see Rathian over there. I'm like, oh yeah, these things, they would help grant you back some sanity back. I actually forgot about that. Actually, I don't think those were in heroic. That might be normal only. So, you see those big tentacles there? Watch this thing drop. So then it has these things, these hemorrhages on it, which you had to focus. And you see these ads that spawn? Yeah, that was my job, to grab these ads and control them while everybody else focused on the boss as well as the hemorrhages on this tentacle. Because if we didn't, it would be a big problem because it would keep spawning ads. So it was something we literally had to make sure we were doing correctly. So, once he reaches a certain point, he runs, and we have to continue after him. Ah! I forgot about that.
Champions, do not relent!
So now, he goes there, and we can't go and attack him because he gets adaptive membrane, which absorbs all damage. So what we have to do to progress is we have to go here and destroy these growths. Now, doing this solo, you can just go in here and just do this one at a time, but when you had to do this, like, when it was current, we had to split the raid in half and go here and try to do this equally. Because the idea was that you would take those down, and then you would drop down here to face him. And we only had, like, a bit of time, plus we were also dealing with the sandy mechanic. And these things, of course, did hurt. But yeah, you couldn't just do this all together on one side because of the sandy mechanic. So we had to split the raid in half in order to make sure that we destroyed these things equally. Because if we didn't, well, it was basically a wipe. Every time you take one of these things down, he gets rid of his synthesis. Now he's trying to come after me, and I'm trying to get down to where he is. There we go. Over here, big boy. So Rathian's over there. If we hit the cloak cooldown, we'll get transported to him over there.
Champions, N'Zoth is luring us into the core of his mind. I dare not enter that foul place, lest I lose myself to his madness. Strike him down.
So now we follow him in here to the main area of N'Zoth. And once you've gotten to this point, it's really like you've basically won the fight, because you'll notice it's like, okay, now we just finish him off because he's low health, and it's like, okay, we got this now. If you reach this point, you had basically won this fight.
Is eternal.
I have many, many wares. May your...
Every war waged, every trial overcome, led you here to me. My vision shall be made real. Complete the circle. Open the way.
For an old god who claims to see everything, you are blind to the threat before you.
Thanks for the vote of confidence there, Rathan. From his Titan-forged prison deep beneath the waves, N'Zoth spent eons subtly spreading his influence across Azeroth. Now free from captivity, the Corruptor reveals his true form as he enacts his ultimate plan to make his vision of the Black Empire our new reality. If he is not stopped, all we have ever known will be remade in the image of his eternal madness. Oh my gosh, trying to explain this fight. There is so much when it comes to this fight. Oh man. I remember actually watching and checking out the Race to World First on this fight. And then of course, this is where Complexity Limit really started to make a name for themselves. Because up until this point, Method had been the kings of World First rating. It was N'Zoth when Complexity Limit got one of their first big world firsts. And that's where things kind of changed, at least for them. So, we of course never did this fight on Mythic. We did it on Heroic, and oh man. You'll notice we also have the heart down here as a 3-minute cooldown, which restores sanity every second for 4 seconds. Moving or attacking would break this effect, because of course sanity is one of the main mechanics when it comes to this fight. It's been that way for basically since Yogg-Saron. In fact, Yogg-Saron was one of the last times they actually used sanity as an actual mechanic. And it happens a little differently this time for N'Zoth than it did for Yogg-Saron back then. So, he assaults your sanity throughout the entire encounter. When you reach 0, he invades your mind fully, granting you the gift of N'Zoth, which blesses an insane player with 100% increased damage done and healing done, but it will cause the player to become a servant of N'Zoth after 20 seconds, which is mind-controlled. And by the way, if you get rezzed after you become a servant of N'Zoth, it's permanent. You don't lose your mind control. You're still mind-controlled. So at that point, you just have to wipe in order to, or kill the boss in order to remove it. There's no, like, being brought back once you become a servant of N'Zoth at that point. So sometimes what would happen is you would get the gift of N'Zoth, and then you would try to do what you can for, like maybe 10, 15 seconds, and then you would go over here, and you would jump off to try and make sure you died before you became a servant of N'Zoth. Because at that point, it's like, well, okay, I'm going to be mind-controlled anyway, so I may as well not cause the rest of my raid to deal with me after that. Yeah. So, N'Zoth has this thing, Psychic Shell. We can't just straight up attack him. That's not how that works. In order for us to actually do damage to N'Zoth himself, we have to do other things, which is going to involve other stages of us going to this alternate version of the fight in order to deal with something that looks like what we just fought, the Carapace. And there's interesting things we learn as we're doing those aspects. I'll try to show them off as we go through. It's a little tough to do when you're soloing because you have to kind of deal with the fight itself. But they've also tried to make changes where you don't just instantly lose when that happens to you. Like, if I get Gift N'Zoth, instead of becoming mind controlled, I'll actually get back to like 30 sanity. So they've kind of tried to make it where it's not a massive hassle to get mind controlled when you do this fight if you're doing it solo. So I will try my best to show off as much of this as I can. But forgive me if I do end up not being able to actually do my best here.
Your minds remain closed. Come, mortals, glimpse the infinite truths.
Mind graph. Breathing anguish, Shadow Eagle.
Betrayers, abandon your resistance.
So of course this is when we actually get to do damage to N'Zoth before he gets his shell back and he becomes immune to damage again. So then this is where we then have to manage a bunch of other stuff in this fight, like the neurons here, to avoid it spreading and preventing us from walking around. And of course we're constantly losing our sanity, and then we get hit by that, which tries to drag us over the edge, and also drag us into that, which will make us lose our sanity even more.
Basher.
And then we've got these tentacles to take down.
Corrupted mind.
Those basher tentacles, also you want to avoid getting hit by those pulls. But when these bashers hit the ground,
First.
yeah, it puts corrupted mind on you, which also makes you lose sanity faster. So there was a lot of coordination of, oh, let's take down this side. You guys focus on that tentacle. There was a lot of coordination there when it came to who we would be doing in terms of which tentacle we would attack. Heroic, we had this other mechanic which our minds were tethered to each other. I'm trying to see. So then one group would go into this while we stayed up above to deal with more tentacles. But one group would go into here.
The cataclysm is upon you! The world pillar shatters before the light of Deathwing! Make your peace, mortals! You will heed the call of the Corruptor!
Basher tentacle.
So I'm not going to attack him because I want to show off the other one. So that was one of the cool ones where it shows, oh yeah, we get to have Deathwing there, and he will actually like shoot fire at us to try and damage us. And like I said, another group would stay up here to deal with these tentacles that spawned. But fortunately, when I'm down there, these things don't do anything. Because it's acknowledging, oh yeah, you're by yourself.
Mind grasp.
So you see the grasp there, you would go over here. So that when you do get grabbed, you can see it's about to happen.
The void beckons.
Basher tentacle. Eternal Torment.
There's that orb from the trinkets. So yeah, the Deathwing one was cool because he was also like there, talking, shooting fire. The next one is interesting because it shows a bit of extra lore that maybe you didn't know about, but he knew.
We have a bargain then. I will bring both fleets crashing to the ocean floor, and your champion will deliver the dagger to me.
Anguish. And in turn, Eternal Torment will have the key required to free the old god from his bonds and leave him vulnerable.
After all, I am as dedicated to my master as you are to your subjects.
Indeed. Just to be certain. Shadow Evo. Vanquish. Basher Tentacle.
All paths converge. Perfection.
Champions! Our Forge is nearly charged, champions! Hang in there!
Your word is mine.
Warning, corruption levels approaching 100%.
No! You got to keep fighting, champion!
Through your flesh, my Black Empire is reborn.
Don't listen to his lies! You don't belong to him! You're a child of Azeroth! Her strength is your strength!
Attention! New anchor point acquired.
Well then, what are you waiting for?
Acknowledged. Firing sequence initiated.
Hold on, champion!
So I may have killed him a little fast there, but at the same time I was concerned about the sanity issue, and I didn't want to have to do that whole thing all over again. But I hope you guys saw enough of what I was trying to show you, which was the next part was the one that I thought was interesting, was a conversation that happened between Ashara and Sylvanas, which I thought was kind of cool. Obviously when the fight's going on, you can't really take that all in because you're doing the fight, but yeah. That last part there, once we get him to that last phase, oh man. I remember that was kind of like the big race there, because you're like literally trying to like, oh, quick. Like, there was a lot of having to deal with some of those things as you're losing your sanity, trying to make sure we manage when we use our Heart of Azeroth cooldown to get our sanity back, and trying to get him down to that last part to get to that last cutscene. I remember when we got him down that first time, and just the absolute yes that our group had. It was such a wonderful feeling. And then we looted this, and we were able to get our thing, which let us get our AOTC mount, which was really nice. Being able to do that as a group after all the work and progression we did together as a group. And that's the satisfying aspect of raiding for me.
Well met!
Oh, it worked! You were the final anchor that let us turn the Forge's power against N'Zoth. Thanks to your heart that you wear, Nyalotha Raid is gone for good. Celebration will have to wait, though. The old god's forces hit the chamber of hard, and we'd best get repairs on the way. To think that would have happened if what would have happened if he had captured it? You saved our world from certain doom. You're a true champion of Azeroth. By the way, one of the mythic mechanics for this fight is that you actually go into the chamber here and fight another ad during the fight, and then come back to finish off N'Zoth. It's a pretty crazy, hectic part of the fight. So now, I actually did pick up the quest, by the way, which was to go take down Nyalotha. So now I want to show you guys what happens when you actually complete this quest. So in order to exit this, we go over here.
The dark visions have come to pass. The Black Empire rises in Alderaan.
Let's just go ahead and quickly fly back to the wound. Let's be honest, we're never gonna forget Magni's, calling us champion and telling us about the wounds. It's always gonna be in our minds. We're never gonna forget Magni during this expansion, constantly saying those things. That's not how the expansion started. Like when BFA went live, what's the first thing we heard? Champion, I need you to come to the wound. To the sword! And that's where he gave us the heart. It's literally how he started the expansion. I like Magni. Oh, that's right. I never got my loot from that other boss because he died as an illusion. So. Like I said, I have also not tested doing these raids on Mythic. I will test to see whether or not I can actually solo these on Mythic. It would be nice. I hope I can. We shall see.
Azeroth cries out in pain.
You did it! Nyalotha's forces are scattered, and his grip on our world is fading. You truly are the champion of Azeroth.
Remember, since being wounded by the Mad Titan, Azeroth has been crying out in pain. In her hour of need, she lent you her power. Today, at long last, she's free from the grasp of the old gods. Her song rings clear and strong throughout this chamber. Hold her heart with pride. Know that you are more than a champion of your people. You are a champion of Azeroth!
Fatality!
Which of course gives you a massive amount of Azerite power. Which also, hold on. Whoops. There it is. All right. Well, that was fun getting to relive using those. Memories. Like I said, I have a lot of personal fond memories from my time in Nyalotha because of my actual growth and progression as a player. So even though I have my many gripes with BFA, I can't hate it because there's a lot of personal memories I have from that expansion, especially because, remember, as I say, you'd be surprised how much it allowed us to kind of like bond through this game during a time where we all basically had to stay home and we didn't know what was going to happen. Think back to what it was like during the pandemic and how scared we all were, and the amount of uncertainty we all had. But for many of us who played this game, we were thinking, well, we can't leave home, so I guess we'll just have to play some more WoW. You know, even though it was BFA and the Nyalotha tier, it gave me the opportunity to kind of grow and progress as an actual player. And the rest is history, as they say. So I owe a lot to the Nyalotha tier, but also especially to that guild, Wipes on Trash. If any of you guys ever see this, Donna, Beard, all you guys from Wipes on Trash on the Malagos Ice Crown server, I still hold those memories close to my heart fondly to this day. You guys really helped me grow as a player and get to experience these things that I never thought that I was actually going to experience. I probably would not be where I am as a player today if it wasn't for you guys. And thank you for that. So, with that, BFA came to a conclusion. And that is where this series will also come to a halt until Blizzard makes the raids in the next expansion soloable, which they are not. As far as I can tell, they are not. And I still have yet to test whether or not I can solo these raids on Mythic. I will probably give it a try, but who knows how that's going to go. I don't know whether or not, I'll probably be fine with my gear, but we'll see. Who knows? Until then, I hope you guys have enjoyed my little... What would we call this? My little... Both a trip down memory lane for myself, but also in case there are those of you who perhaps didn't get to experience these raids or didn't get the time to kind of like soak these in or learn about them as they were happening at the time. I hope there are those of you that are continuing to enjoy these videos. And I hope that my talking about these things isn't bothering you. I mean, if so, sorry you feel that way. I'm not going to apologize for it because that's one of the things I want to do with these. If it does to the point where it's really hurting your enjoyment, then I'm sure there are others that have done videos on these you could find where they don't talk. But I hope my sharing these things is adding to it, not taking away. But I hope you guys have enjoyed. And I will see you guys next time when we head into the Shadowlands.